Electric grids will be tested in the West Coast as a potentially historic heat wave intensifies. Coming up today on Business Matters. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with me on this Friday afternoon. I'm your host, Don Ma. Let's start off with the market. Wall Street stocks indexes closed higher today. The tech-heavy Nasdaq and S&P 500 hitting record highs. Mega cap stocks rallied on after data showing that U.S. labor market was a little bit weak. We have more of that in just a bit. U.S. economy may be on the verge of fighting with a stagflationary environment here. That's where growth is moderating, but inflation is staying where it is for now. Many analysts do support the soft landing view of the economy rather than a recession. Now, if you're watching us from the West Coast, get ready to feel the heat because temperatures in Las Vegas are set to hit 118 degrees this weekend, and that's a record high. Vegas baked in 117 degrees this past Sunday. And it's a similar story for the rest of the West Coast, from Idaho to Texas and down into Mexico. Residents are being warned of power grid strain as sweaty Americans turn up their AC. Many places across the country in recent years have seen rolling blackouts as utility companies struggle to bring the cool. There's also a risk of fires as the landscape dries out. California is already battling several blazes, including the Thompson Fire north of Sacramento. Okay, onto the job market. New data seems to show that the labor market is weakening. The official unemployment rate just hit a 2.5-year high. Wage growth has moderated, and while the data shows 206,000 new jobs added in June, the estimated gains for May and April were revised down sharply. So the jobs market is giving an indication of the overall health of the economy. Obviously, if things slow down, businesses hire fewer people. And in recent times, it's also become an important indicator for investors. The Federal Reserve officially bases its policy decisions in part on the health of the job market, and these decisions can have a profound impact on the financial markets and other investment vehicles. Now, for a deep dive into today's jobs report, I spoke to Julia Pollack. She's the chief economist at ZipRecruiter. And in light of this week's report, I asked her if there's reason to worry for the current job market. Julia, always great to have you back on the show. Let me just get straight to the point here. Is the labor market cooling?
Yes, this report has several signs of cooling. Number one, the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.1%. That is the highest reading since November 2021, and it means the era of unemployment being at or below 4%, which we enjoyed for 30 months, is now over. Other signs, long-term unemployment crept up, and then the job gains were pretty narrowly spread. So private sector and service sector job gains slowed. So 70,000 of the jobs added were in the government. That's a remarkable number, and over the past 12 months, we've actually seen 600,000 payrolls added in the public sector. Now, part of that is just catch-up growth. The public sector was lagging behind the private sector in the post-COVID recovery, but it's also a sign that the private sector is cooling down. The reason that the public sector had such trouble early on in the recovery was because the private sector was so hot. That's no longer the case. So, I think that's another reason to be a little bit concerned.
And what about the numbers of hours worked each week?
So overall, the work week has stayed steady at 34.3 hours. That's the bottom end of the range that we see in a healthy labor market typically. But the work week for production and non-supervisory workers, for sort of rank and file workers in the labor market, non-managers, that ticked downwards. And wage growth also ticked downwards, both as signs of cooling demand for workers.
Okay, so is this the beginning of the cooling, or are we about to stabilize around this area?
No, I think this could be a tipping point, and I think that the Fed is going to start to realize that the risks are tilting from overheating to overcooling. They could be behind the curve if they don't start cutting rates soon. The Claudia Sahm rule, which is an indicator, a labor market indicator of impending recessions, is quite close now to being triggered. And that should raise some alarm among Fed members.
Maybe there is a concern that the labor market may be cooling too much. How worried are you on that front?
Well, small increases in the unemployment rate often lead to larger increases in the unemployment rate because they set off a negative spiral in which workers find it hard to find jobs or the jobs that they want. They then pull back on their spending. Companies then experience a decline in demand for their goods and services, and then they cut workers. We are hearing reports from companies saying that consumers are becoming more price sensitive. We see many of the major U.S. companies, Walmart and Target, slashing prices on large categories of products. And we saw job losses in bars and restaurants in this jobs report. So clearly the consumer is under a little bit of strain and pulling back already. And so those are reasons to be, a little bit concerned about this labor market going forward. There are so many employers we talk to day in and day out as a recruiter who want to hire, who want to take a long-term strategy and invest in their talent pipelines, but who've been holding back precisely because interest rates are so restrictive. Apartment building developers, for example, don't want to borrow money now to build a new project when that investment just doesn't ink out at these rates. But once rates fall by about a percentage point, the whole picture changes, and many of those investments and growth strategies actually come into play.
So speaking about employers wanting to hire more employees, can you talk about the wage growth situation in today's jobs report?
Yes, so wage growth is continuing to slow at 3.9% over the year, or just 0.3% over the month. It has cooled measurably over the last year, and that is another encouraging sign for the Fed that the labor market is no longer going to be a source of inflationary pressure.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Julia.
Thanks so much, Don.
Peter Thiel is one of the first well-known businessmen to invest in the Enhanced Games, a sports organization that wants to have legal doping for Olympic-style events. Thiel is investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the company. NTD's Sean Marshall has more information.
Billionaire Peter Thiel is in talks to raise around $300 million for the Enhanced Games. It's an Olympic sports alternative event that allows the athletes to use performance-enhancing drugs. Thiel has described it as the Olympics of the future. The Enhanced Games debuted in 2023 and is planning to hold annual events in track and field, swimming, weightlifting, and other sports. London-based businessman Aaron D'Souza, the president of the Enhanced Games, says doping is common in competitive sports. And with this format, athletes will have nothing to hide, and it will obliterate all world records. The company's social media displays a video of a runner that they claim has already broken Usain Bolt's world record in running. The World Anti-Doping Agency has condemned the idea, calling it dangerous and irresponsible. But athletes are beginning to lose trust in the World Anti-Doping Agency. Just last month, U.S. Olympic athletes spoke to Congress to address doping problems. That's after finding out that 23 Chinese swimmers had tested positive for banned heart medication ahead of the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, but were still allowed to compete. 5 of those swimmers went on to win medals, including 3 gold medals.
I outworked any single human on this planet, and that's a fact. And that's why I got the results that I got. And for me, I don't want kids growing up thinking that it's only doping and cheating where you're able to do these unfathomable things.
Some Olympic athletes would prefer lifetime bans from the Olympics for competitors that test positive for banned substances. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And JPMorgan says Chase customers should get ready to pay for run-of-the-mill checking accounts. That's if the U.S. government caps the bank's other fees. One federal agency has proposed capping what a customer needs to pay the bank if they're late on a credit card payment or overdraw their account. The agency argues that these fees harm the least well-off. But the head of JPMorgan-owned Chase Bank told the Wall Street Journal that if this revenue source dries up, customers will have to fork out in other ways. And although for Chase, making up the difference sounds ideal, it may be easier said than done. Consumers are more used to being rewarded for putting their money in a bank account rather than being charged for it. And in the digital age, it's become even easier for Americans to seamlessly switch between banks or digital banks. So if you squeeze customers too hard, they may just go elsewhere. A number of banks have sued the government to stop the new proposal from taking effect. We'll keep you updated on this. And one reason you might find yourself with late fees or overdraft fees is poor money management. Well, now over half of all U.S. states will require students to take at least one class on personal finance. California has become the 26th state to do so after Governor Newsom signed it into law yesterday. He says saving for the future, making investments, and spending wisely are lifelong skills that young adults need to learn. So topics will reportedly include bank accounts, budgeting, credit card debt, and loans. But there's also more civics-based material like the role of trade unions and the labor movement's role in winning specified protections and benefits. One analysis puts the cost of new initiative at $200 million per year. More than 340,000 acres of Indiana farmland has disappeared. This is according to an investigation by the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. The state lost nearly 2% of its farmland over 12 years. Some main reasons for the decrease is farmland being used to plant shrubs or just going barren. But despite the decrease, state officials pointed out that production of key crops actually increased significantly over the period studied. All right, taking a break now, but coming up, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer begins his new job today. What will the Labour leader's economic policies look like? And baseball's Shohei Ohtani is bringing a new wave of Japanese tourists to the U.S. We'll show you what it's like at Dodger Stadium in L.A. after the break. Welcome back. Keir Starmer, head of the UK Labour Party, is the new British Prime Minister. What are his economic policies for the country? Here's the story.
The UK has a new Prime Minister. Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party.
Our country has voted decisively for change.
The new PM's economic priority, wealth creation.
The mission that stands above all others will be raising Britain's productivity growth, a goal that for my Labour Party will become an obsession.
In a speech late last year, Starmer acknowledged that this is not the traditional Labour Party, but he says change is necessary.
He's a technocrat, he's not an ideologue. He will pursue things that he thinks is going to work, and that, above all, he will pursue things that he thinks will produce economic growth.
Politics professor John Curtis says the public shouldn't expect much difference in the new government's fiscal policies. Starmer even talks about reducing taxation.
The backdrop to this is rather unusual. Taxation and spending have risen to record levels under the previous government. Therefore, we shouldn't be surprised that the Labour Party is not necessarily looking to expand the role of the state.
Starmer's plans for growth include reducing regulations to boost the construction and infrastructure sectors, including renewable energies. Starmer says he won't raise the corporate tax and that tax cuts for the working class are a good thing.
It is also important to note what Keir Starmer means by working people, because he, when probed on this, he did say that it was people who were unable to write a check when things went wrong.
Financial expert Antonia Medlicott says people who own their own homes and work full-time can't be sure they're included. She says it's still early.
We're going to have to wait and see, because they have to get their feet under the desk. Obviously, all of this money needs to come from somewhere.
Starmer says he plans to stand for security and moderation, calling his policies securonomics. He says his government is committed to a calm and patient rebuilding.
And it's worth mentioning that Starmer has appointed Rachel Reeves as the UK's Chancellor to oversee all financial matters in the country. Professor John Curtis tells us that Reeves is widely regarded as fiscally conservative, and the former Bank of England official says she will stick to ironclad fiscal rules to demonstrate that Labour Party will be fiscally responsible. And the EU-China trade war seems to be heating up. China could be planning to put new tariffs on European brandy. And this news comes on the heels of the EU slapping large tariffs on China's EVs, leading to some to suggest that Beijing's latest plans may be retaliation. Europe's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles go into effect today and add as much as 37% to the cost of China-made EVs imported into Europe. And Europe has accused China of subsidizing its EV industry and hurting European manufacturers as a result. In an apparent retaliation, China's Commerce Ministry says it's looking into whether European countries are subsidizing their brandy production. China's state-backed Global Times said officials are also considering an anti-subsidy investigation into European dairy imports and putting tariffs on European gas cars. New fans, new excitement, and new sponsors, all that at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. Some fans are coming from as far away as Japan. Much of this is because of one of the team's newest players, Shohei Ohtani. We take a look at how the city is rolling out the welcome mat in a very big way.
Baseball is America's pastime, but here in one of the country's oldest baseball stadiums, you'll see a celebration of Japanese heritage and hear Japanese language tours 4 days a week, all because of 6'4",
he's superhero,
star hitter and pitcher.
We are proud of him.
New Dodger Shohei Ohtani.
He's good baseball player and so cute.
After a record-breaking contract with the Dodgers, Ohtani is drawing fans from across the Pacific Ocean in waves.
We're expecting a spike, but truly nothing like this.
The team has a dozen new Japanese sponsors this year and added 6 new Japanese-speaking tour guides. Dodger Stadium food now goes beyond the Dodger dog to the Kurabuta pork sausage dog, sushi, chicken katsu, and takoyaki, which are round fritters filled with octopus. You can get the original or...
I just got a kick! Salsa and cheese and guacamole and cheese. American taste.
The Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board says 80 to 90% of visitors from Japan come to Dodger Stadium at least once during their trip to LA. And many of them end up here in LA's Little Tokyo to find the mural they've heard about all the way from Japan. Little Tokyo businesses say they have double the customers they normally get this time of year. And with the weak Japanese yen, it's a costly trip for travelers from Japan spending US dollars. But they'll find a few local deals.
After he hit the home run, next day it will be 50% off.
If Shohei hits a home run, we automatically pass out a Shohei shot.
You hope this goes on for 10 years. Yeah. The Miyako Hotel general manager says rooms are fully booked during home games. Takayo Hizume says her son also played baseball, and she feels as if Ohtani is Japan's son.
And wait till he starts pitching for us. And it's like, my gosh.
Whether fans are from his home country, second-generation Japanese American, or have no connection to Japan at all, it's a unifying moment.
It's amazing.
A moment as American as a hot dog on the 4th of July and a takoyaki covered in guac.
This is good for everyone. This is good for all of baseball.
Now, barbecue chicken may be a 4th of July favorite, but this weekend, you need to prepare your poultry with a little more grease. That's because Saturday is National Fried Chicken Day. It's observed every year on July 6th, and it is believed that the practice of deep frying chicken in fat was imported to the U.S. by Scottish immigrants. So in a way, it's a very appropriate Independence Week observance that is celebrating one of the highlights of America's rich cultural melting pot. So whether it's at home or at a restaurant, take a moment to enjoy National Fried Chicken Day with a few pieces of golden deep fried poultry goodness. A number of fast food chains like KFC, Popeyes, Burger King, Jack in the Box, and others are offering specials on Saturday. So celebrate by posting some of your favorite pictures with the hashtag National Fried Chicken Day. And Bitcoin is set for its biggest weekly fall in nearly a year today. Traders are worried over the likely dumping of tokens from the abandoned Japanese exchange Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox was the world's leading exchange for cryptocurrencies before it collapsed a decade ago. Today, it started returning Bitcoin to some creditors, and these creditors are seen as likely sellers since the token's worth was only hundreds of dollars in 2014. The downward move in Bitcoin triggered the largest daily liquidations for crypto traders since the collapse of crypto exchange FTX in 2022, according to crypto trading firm Wintermute. The American dream of home ownership may not be quite as dreamy as it once was. This is due in part to soaring prices and high mortgage rates. A Zillow study showed that you need to earn more than $100,000 per year to comfortably afford a typical home in many parts of the U.S. right now. The national average for a 30-year mortgage rate was around 7.09% as of July 3rd, according to Bankrate. So if you want to buy a $350,000 home with a 20% down payment, the monthly payment for principal and interest will be somewhere around $1,800. Now, for a $400,000 home, you'll have to shell out over $2,600 a month. And here at NTD's Business Matters, we care about your financial well-being. So one thing that could be detrimental to that is online credit card scams. So here are some tips to avoid falling victim to them. First, use credit cards instead of debit cards to avoid direct bank account access if fraud occurs. And make sure you practice safe browsing habits. For example, you may want to update your browser, your software, use strong passwords, and of course, avoid public Wi-Fi. And if you want just a bit more added security, opt in for digital wallets or virtual credit card numbers. And of course, you should always verify website credibility before sharing your personal information. All right, and with that, all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback for the episode, please feel free to let me know. You can email us at business@ntd.com or leave a comment online. I do read them. And as I always say, business matters. We'll see you back here on Monday.